So College Game Day is headed back to another Alabama game. Is this a good thing?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. And Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll tell you about FanDuel in just a bit. Thank you, everydayers, for joining us every day. And thank you, newbies, for joining us today. Jimmy, it was just announced College Game Day will be back in Baton Rouge for the Alabama game. I think it's a good choice. I think that, if you had looked back, you probably would have said, hey, they 6-7 weeks ago, you would have said, oh, it's clearly going to be at the Grove. But I think this game probably has the most on it for the weekend of any game. I can't think of a bigger game. And I know that it's two lost teams, but it's the truth. This is a playoff game.
Yeah, largely that's true. I think, what I don't like is using definitives. This is a wacky season. I don't know that everyone grasps how truly wacky it is. In fact, Saturday, I believe, I'm probably butchering this number because I'm doing it off memory, but I believe 36% of all underdogs won the game outright. Yeah. That's the first time, I believe, in 6 years that's happened. But see, my thing is, I don't really think it's so fluky. I think this is just sort of the end result of NIL and the transfer portal creating some level of parity. So I don't think what happened this weekend is an outlier. I think this is just what we have. And because of all these upsets, I've been saying it for 2 or 3 weeks, but now I'm more certain than ever. I believe a 3-loss team is either going to make the playoff, or maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong, they missed by like a single spot. I think a 3-loss team is going to be up there. And for further proof of that, if y'all look at the AP and coaches polls that came out on Sunday, there are 3-loss teams already in those polls, and they're SEC teams. And if they're 24, and I'm not saying that those are the 3-loss teams that will make it, but just think of this: if they're 24 today and they've got to get to 11 to get in the playoff, they got 4 weeks to move up 13 spots. That's not crazy. So the point is, 3-loss teams might have a shot here, and that's why I don't like being so definitive. I think if Alabama beats LSU, for instance, LSU's strength of schedule, their remaining schedule is 9th. I think LSU, for instance, could crawl back in it. They would need some upsets, but upsets seem to be the order of the day in 2024.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think you're way off. I don't think a 3-loss team's getting in this year. I just don't. Look, it could happen. Nobody thought Iowa State would lose this weekend. They lost at home. Let's see who they lost to Texas Tech, by the way. And then there were some, Pittsburgh was hammered by SMU. And look, it's weird in the ACC. They may finish with 3 undefeated teams and only 2 of them in the conference, and only 2 of them can play for the championship. But College Game Day will be there. Our buddy Reese Davis will be there. Alabama, I think this might tie us with Ohio State. I'm not sure. For the most appearances.
That's pretty impressive, because I bet at one point before Saban, Ohio State had a massive lead on us. This is all ground we've covered up since in the Saban era. But no, I like Game Day being there. Hey, look, part of the pitch when you're recruiting, when Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan are recruiting for Alabama, part of the pitch is, don't you want to play in the biggest games? Game Day goes to the biggest games. Alabama's number of appearances rivaling or passing Ohio State, that's just all more evidence that, hey, if you want to play in the biggest games, sign with Alabama. And the Game Day appearances prove it. I don't think Game Day's presence gives LSU or Alabama any particular edge. I think that's sort of silly talk. I think it's going to be decided by blocking and tackling. And in Alabama's case, turnovers and penalties will have something to do with the outcome, and not Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit's presence. But it certainly is interesting having Nick Saban return to Baton Rouge, because my question is, I wonder, ever since he got hired at Alabama, his returns to Baton Rouge have been greeted with a chorus of boos and the fans throwing tomatoes at him. I wonder if that's going to change a little bit now that the career is over and he's with GameDay and not Alabama. And I wonder if there's now going to be some level, like there should be, an appreciation of what he did for LSU when he was there, because that's what should carry the day. But sports fans are sports fans, people are people, so I'm not sure what to expect.
No, there should be a level of reverence. I mean, he should be revered by that fan base. He brought them into the spotlight. Now, somebody will say LSU was great before Saban, but they weren't.
They weren't.
They were never a factor.
They weren't.
They just never were.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And he won more. When they say Saban even won a national championship at LSU, I'd say he won two, because I think that 2007 team Les Miles won the national championship with, the 07 team, there was a lot of Saban influence on that bunch. You know, now it's Les Miles championship. I'm just saying, let's give Nick Saban 1.2 national championships at LSU. We'll give him a fifth of that one they won in 07.
Well, just for the record, and I believe this is updated, the most appearances with GameDay is Ohio State was 61, Bama was 60. Then a massive drop-off to Florida at 42. God, I wonder when the last time Florida hosted was, or not hosted, just was involved with the GameDay. Then Oklahoma 41, Michigan 40, Georgia, Notre Dame 37, Florida State 36. And then there's the most times hosting, Ohio State 23, Bama 19. I think Bama's is misleading in the sense that I don't know that they include any of the times GameDay would have gone to Legion Field.
That did happen.
Yeah, and it did happen. And the most wins, Alabama is 38-21 when hosting GameDay. LSU is 22-13. So
roughly the same-ish in terms of a one-loss percentage.
Pretty much the same. Pretty much the same.
It's terrible about that. I don't think it really shouldn't. You know, here's what's going to benefit LSU. The game is in Baton Rouge in front of that crowd. That's what's going to benefit LSU, not GameDay. Right. I don't think GameDay has any effect at all. And GameDay's in the morning and the game's at night. And I sort of hope the LSU fans show up loud and crazy for GameDay, because they can scream it all out, you know, hours before the game starts. That sounds good to me. But no, the advantage LSU has is just simply playing in Tiger Stadium. And I know Alabama's had a lot of success there, but this Alabama team is not. The 2024 Alabama team is not. And there are some guys on this team that were on the team last time we went to Baton Rouge and they lost. So I don't really think Alabama's one-loss percentage in Tiger Stadium in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I don't think that has squat to do with the game on Saturday. I think this is the 2024 season. And if anything, maybe the last time they went down there, it didn't work out great for Alabama. Maybe that's a small factor.
Okay. I'm with you, but I also think you're way off again. I think that I think I'm going to push back in the sense that I think traditions and streaks and what's another word? Occurrences that happen very frequent occurrences, are what they are because of what they are. Meaning that, look, you can discount Alabama's record at Baton Rouge. Nobody wins in Baton Rouge more than LSU except Alabama. You can discount it all you want to, and that's fine. And it does make sense. And I guess in a micro sense, you're right. But big picture, clearly, for whatever reason, Alabama is not affected as much in Baton Rouge as some other teams are. Clearly. Now, clearly, just like, again, clearly, Georgia has an Alabama problem to a degree. We're the only team that's beaten them in the last 50-something times they've tried to beat somebody. It's at some point it quits being a coincidence and starts being, that's kind of how it is. Just like, for whatever reason, it seemed like Gus Malzahn didn't give Nick Saban fits like everybody says, but he did have some success. He was a thorn in his craw. What do you say? Stick in his craw, something. I mean, he was in his craw.
Something bad about the craw.
The craw
something bad's going on with Coach Saban's craw there.
He's got a bad craw problem. He made me some of that Rise mushroom formula or whatever that I see advertised on Facebook all the time. They must think I have the worst bowels in the world. All I'm getting is colostrum commercials on Facebook and Rise mushroom coffee. I'm like, I'm not buying any mushroom coffee. Well, I might end up buying some mushroom coffee. I don't know. We'll see. Depends on the kind of mushrooms they are. If there's some of those cool Colorado frogs that you lick, I might be getting a bushel full of it. All right. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's take a break. Okay, I want to tell you about FanDuel because I love FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. I mean, I don't need to tell you that, but I have a bunch. And you can get ready for the NFL action with America's #1 sports book, and that's FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 150 smacks in bonus bets if you win, baby. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, and it's not that mushroom coffee you just drank, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Who else is going to give you that kind of deal? Nobody I know, especially nobody that's not named FanDuel. So the line has come out, and Alabama opens as a 3-point favorite. And just to remind you, since last time you screwed this 3-point favorite thing up badly, the home field is worth 3 points. So if this were a neutral field game, Alabama theoretically would be a 6-point favorite, because I think you screwed this up on the Tennessee game pretty badly.
Well, whatever. I mean, me and Alabama screwed up that Tennessee game pretty good.
Either way, y'all didn't cover it. Either way you did it, neither one of y'all covered.
I'm a little surprised at the line. But, you know, the more I dive into LSU, I see a team that reminds me of Alabama in a few ways. Number one, Alabama has struggled to run the ball a little bit. I mean, that's been a thing, right? I mean, Alabama hasn't run the ball like fans thought. LSU has run the ball worse. I mean, the LSU's worse than Alabama running the ball. And when you look at their offensive line, it becomes a real head scratcher, because their offensive line is absolutely full of proven star players. 2 top 10 picks at tackle. Both guards are returning starters and all-stars and future NFL players. The center is the only new guy, and he's a weirdly huge center. I mean, he's 6'6". Most centers aren't as big as he is, but he's a redshirt freshman. Maybe you could say he might be the guy that you try to take advantage of there. But their offensive line is awesome, and they can really throw the ball, which you would think would open up the run. But they cannot run the ball, and that's why they remind me of each other. Both defenses have struggled. Neither defense is as good as it should be or could be, and aren't as good as the historical norms in Baton Rouge and Tuscaloosa. However, they are improved over last year. Alabama is not as good as they were on defense last year. And I can't help but think that with both run games questionable, with both defenses questionable, I think we're going to get a huge night from both Garrett Nussmeier and Jalen Milroe through the air, both of them.
I can certainly see that. I can see that. I would love to see that. I'm really having a hard time understanding why it's not at least a pick 'em though.
Yeah, I thought it would. 3 points surprised me. I didn't think LSU would be favored. My guess going in was Alabama by 1. And I guess I'm not really far off there because it's Alabama by 3. But I thought Alabama would be favored by like a point, because Alabama's such a Vegas favorite. I mean, by that, I mean, I think a lot of people, it's that brand. The brand attracts the amateur vote in my mind. That the amateur gambler in Vegas sees that Bama brand and jumps all over it because it's Bama. You know, I'm sure that has to be, but LSU's brand's out there too. So I don't know. I know this. 3 points doesn't seem like a big spread when I'm anticipating quite a few points in this game, Luke. I mean, right now, I haven't settled on a score. I haven't even settled on picking a winner, though I'm leaning Alabama. But I'm thinking both teams score in the 30s or around 30, which is a lot of points for a 3-point spread type game.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, because you hear so much about Baton Rouge at night. I mean, all these people talk about Baton Rouge at night. It's crazy. nobody can win there. It feels like more people win there than they should. I don't know what the official record is, but again, I'm going to say, Troy has won there in the last 10 years. Alabama certainly has. Auburn has. Auburn has under Brian Harsin.
Let's go back to the Saban era, 2008 forward. I have no doubt, Tuscaloosa at night has been a harder place to win since 2008 than Baton Rouge. I'm sure that's true. Because in my mind, it has all to do about the team. I mean, I know there's, quote, difficult places to play. I'll give you two. Here's one, and we're going to talk about this game, I'm sure, before the show's out. But South Carolina, that's a tough place to play. It's loud. Their fans are into it. But here's the thing. South Carolina is usually not good. They are right now. They're good. Thus, it's a tough place to play. I think Tiger Stadium's a tough place to play because usually LSU is good. And sometimes they're really good. And a really good team is tough to beat in their stadium at night.
Yeah, and South Carolina actually, they look good. We will talk about this game in a minute, but boy, we're going to talk about the game and the advantages and all this throughout the week. But I can't decide what's more of a factor here. Did Alabama's brand and reputation for joyless murder ball for the last 15 years, did that supersede LSU at night with a bunch of drunk Cajuns? Is that, or if Alabama was playing somewhere else at night with a team of equal talent to LSU under the same circumstances, would Alabama be even more of a favorite, and LSU's allure at night made it so that the line was only 3? It's a philosophical question nobody will ever be able to answer.
They need to base these lines on the metrics, and I was looking at Alabama's metrics, and by that I mean kind of the deeper analysis, deeper dive stats, and Alabama measures up pretty good in most of them. I mean, I think it's not a surprise to say that I think Alabama's a little underrated, not necessarily by the national analysts, but by Alabama's own fans. The metrics look pretty good for this team. For instance, the strength of record, which is a fun ESPN metric. I'm not sure what all goes into it. I have an idea, but I'm not sure what all goes into it. But I do know that the playoff committee rankings come out Tuesday, and they sort of track ESPN's strength of record, because I think the same thing the committee is looking for, ESPN already has this formula that takes all those things into account. And strength of record just basically says we're ranking resumes here. We're ranking everybody's resume. Alabama is 10th, and that's in the playoff field, which I suspect Alabama will be Tuesday night. And I won't be surprised. As a matter of fact, that's going to be my prediction, that Alabama is 10th on Tuesday night. And LSU is just outside the playoff field with their strength of record. They're around 14. So that's how close this game is. And the fact that it's down there, I think it's going to be tight, but I also think both teams are going to score quite a few points. I think that Alabama secondary, which has been exposed at times, that Tennessee could have passed Alabama, could have just made the game ugly in the first half if those receivers had caught those balls, or if Nico had hit those receivers. Nussmeier's not going to miss those throws. Nussmeier's going to make every one of those throws. And if those LSU receivers are running around like Tennessee's did, it needs to be a track meet, or Alabama's got no chance.
No, we're going to get blown out.
Yeah,
100%. Let's talk a little game time. Look, if you're going to the Alabama LSU game, trust me, I know people who have bought tickets on Game Time for this game. And you want to use code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase there. But forget about the $20. That's nice, and it's a nice little thing, little perk to get you involved. But once you do it, you're going to be hooked, because I've used it, and I am hooked. And I've used it for World Series, Major League Baseball. I've used it for college baseball, basketball, football, all these things. Had one screw up that was my fault, and the customer service was awesome, and we got through it. It was my fault, and they helped me fix it, and it was lickety-split fixed. It was just awesome. So go to Game Time, use code LOCKEDONCollege. You will not regret it. I promise you. Jimmy and I wholeheartedly endorse it. Go check out GameTime. Use that app. Get $20 off with your code Locked On College. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this weekend. I've already talked a lot about it. Feel free to just sort of run down some of the games and what you saw, Jimmy, and how it affected Alabama.
Right. Well, first of all, Alabama. The biggest bump Alabama got. Alabama got 2 bumps. First of all, 7 ranked teams lost, 5 of them to unranked teams. That all bumped Alabama up. I think everybody saw in the AP and coaches poll rankings, Alabama move up, to I think 11 in those polls. I think they'll be slightly higher in the committee rankings because the committee rankings take into account things like strength of schedule. Alabama sits 10th in the nation strength of schedule. That might not sound like a lot to you guys, but consider this: of all of the contenders, the teams that are contending to be in the playoff, there's only 2 teams that rank highly in strength of schedule. Georgia at number 1 and Alabama at 10. No one else that has a strength of schedule ranking that high is in the playoff mix. So I do think that Alabama benefited from the weekend greatly by just simply moving up in the polls, moving up in the playoff committee rankings, but more importantly than that, resting their battered bones for LSU. There wasn't a particular outcome that I felt was like, oh, thank goodness for Alabama. I do think, though, that South Carolina beating a really good Texas A&M team and Vanderbilt winning another SEC game, this time on the road, helped the perception of Alabama. And perception means a lot when it comes to these rankings, which are sort of like beauty contests. And I think perception is a factor here. So South Carolina winning, Tennessee winning, Vanderbilt winning, all of those things have helped Alabama's resume and their metrics. When that committee is at meeting in Grapevine, and they're meeting right now as we record this, they're going over all those numbers. And I think Alabama's numbers were helped over the weekend. But regardless of that, Luke, regardless of what the committee says Tuesday, you said it to start the show. And even though I still think a 3-loss team has a shot here, I do think that it's very fair to the narrative that this is a winning you're in, losing you're out game against LSU is very fair. You got to win the game regardless of what the committee's saying about you.
Shoot, you caught me on a mute. Yeah, it does. And you do have to win the game. But again, I want to go back to this weekend. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that I think South Kakalaki beating A&M helped us tremendously on 2 fronts. Improves our strength of schedule, obviously. And at the same time, how about, first of all, let's also say Shane Beamer, good job keeping your team together. Because once again, I thought the SEC officials were crap all weekend. I thought they were really bad again. And just overall, and we had no dog in the fight. I just thought every time I watched the game, I was like, you guys suck. But then they went on the road and destroyed Oklahoma. They come home and they beat Texas A&M. They've got their act together, man. They've got their act together.
I'll tell you what, he's not great yet because he's still swimming in the deep end without floaties in my mind. He's not ready to be playing, but he just has to because he's the best I got. But I think we're about a year away from Lenora Sellers being a thing. I mean, I think he's just young. Like I said, he's not Milroe last year. He's Milroe 2022. But I mean that as a compliment because we saw how good Jalen became. I think Sellers could be on that sort of track. They just have to have some patience with him. But I think Lenore Sellers is going to be a heck of a player. But that's that South Carolina front group. They gave Alabama fits. They give everybody fits. They're just really strong up front.
Yeah, and then, of course, I mean, you couldn't help but love Diego Pavia going into Auburn. And, I mean, they beat Auburn into submission. And they'll say, well, the stats show that Auburn should have blah, 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 blah. Give me a break. Vanderbilt controlled the clock just like they did against us. Vanderbilt played sort of a slop fest, whereas against us, it was like back and forth, back and forth. They controlled the clock, but it was still more back and forth. They obviously had more, they scored 40 points on us, and they only scored 17 against Auburn. But Auburn scored their only touchdown on 4th down on just a heck of a catch and a terrible throw that Fairweather turned into a touchdown. Otherwise, Auburn doesn't score at all.
Yep. I mean, shout out to Vanderbilt. This is the best Vanderbilt team in years and years. I looked up their strength of record. I talked about it earlier in the show, strength of record and how it's such an important metric. Vanderbilt is 24th. There's no way that they've ever been 24th. I mean, it's been years since we've been this late in the season, and basically ESPN is telling you that Vanderbilt is the 24th best team in college football based on nothing but resume. 24th best team. They're good. They're good. And I picked Vanderbilt to beat Auburn, and what I said to justify it wasn't some fancy X's and O's argument or Diego Pavia having Hugh Freeze's number. I picked Vanderbilt to beat Auburn because based on nothing but the 2024 season, Vanderbilt's been better than Auburn. They're a better team. I don't think it was a fluky outcome whatsoever. It was in Auburn Stadium. And hey, it's not even a shot at Auburn. I'm just kind of stating a fact. Vanderbilt's a better football team than Auburn in 2024. Now, when Pavia and that group is gone, next year in 2025, it's probably not going to be Vanderbilt better than Auburn. I think Auburn's going to be better than Vanderbilt next year. But this year, Vanderbilt's just a better football team.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I picked Auburn to win just because I'm going reverse jinx on Auburn every time I can. I always pick Auburn to win because I feel like, I always feel like I should bet on Auburn on the money line every time. That way I'm happy either way. I should always do that, but I don't because I'm
Feel
stupid.
free. Who's Auburn? Has Auburn got A&M? They got A&M this weekend?
They're off this week.
Oh, okay.
And Auburn is a 2.5 point favorite.
I would take off. I would take off.
You got to be really careful, and I'm going to be very careful when I tell this story, but a long time ago, back when I think it was when Pat Dye was about to retire, Alabama was doing really well, and I think it must have been 92, and Pat Dye was like not doing well, and Alabama was playing for a championship, and there was an Auburn friend of mine. I was pretty young, like 20 or something, and his mom, the biggest aub you've ever seen in your life, and of course I had maybe had a few libations. And I talked to her and I said, well, who do you have this weekend? I knew that. She said, well, we're off this weekend. And I said, maybe you can beat Idle instead of, I didn't say Idle. I said, I don't want to say it because they might get mad at me. And everybody was like, yeah, that's not a good thing to be telling her. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's a very good, there are a lot of things that I did wrong with this sentence, is what I was thinking. But anyway, so yeah, you got to be careful when you've got an idle week.
Got to be careful when you talk to your friends' mothers. That's the lesson here. That's the lesson here.
Stacey's mom has got it going on.
That's the lesson here. Don't talk to your friends' mothers.
Ever. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.